is just the beginning.
Welcome to the Future of Workforce Development virtual event. I'm Nick Johnston, the publisher of Axios. I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C. Thank you to Facebook for making this conversation possible on the future of workforce development. And welcome to our audiences on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn, and on Axios.com. Join the conversation today on Twitter with @Axios and hashtag Axios Events. Over the next 30 minutes, I'll be joined by my colleagues, Aja Whitaker-Moore and Sara Fischer. We'll unpack how the private and public sectors are supporting workforce development efforts to help workers attain better professional opportunities. Our first guest is Virginia Senator Mark Warner. Senator Warner, thanks for making time for Axios today.
Nick, thanks for having me.
I think we could start with a really big picture question, and kicking it off by asking, how do you define workforce development and why have you made it one of your priorities in the Senate?
Well, let's first of all acknowledge that the whole nature of work has changed. I mean, I think about my dad. He worked for the same company for 37 years. He never made much money, but with that job came security. With that job came decent health care. His company invested in him as he went through his career. There were benefits. When he retired, he got a pension. That world where maybe you needed to go into the workforce with not that many skills, but then if you got a permanent job, the company would invest in you, has basically disappeared. I think about my kids who are in their mid-20s to early 30s. All of them have already had 2 or 3 different jobs. And many people, either by economic necessity or by desire, may be literally working 3 or 4 jobs or gigs at once. We think about the classic of the whole notion of a gig worker. So I think workforce development and the social safety net that attaches that in a modern day environment are the most critical things we can look at. Why I've been a big advocate for portable benefits, so that no matter what kind of work you do, benefits ought to attach from your first hour of work and they ought to accrue. And I've got a whole theory, which I hope we'll get into. I know we don't have a lot of time, about how we ought to rethink the whole notion of investment in human capital.
Well, let's dig into that right now then. How do we rethink the investment of human capital? What is the role for the federal government, for instance, to play in that?
Well, again, I think we got to step back a little bit and recognize that we've lived in a world over the last 100+ years where there was shortage of capital, but abundance of workers. So everything we did in our tax code, accounting system, and reporting system benefited capital over workers. And we had a tax code, frankly, that also benefited deployment of that capital into things like research and development, hard tangible goods. We didn't treat workers very well. And candidly, while I think there are government training programs, the history of government training programs actually being super successful is mixed at best. So the big idea, and frankly, I'm not sure it's going to be included in this reconciliation package. I think workforce may be the area that is the most left out, frankly, at the most time of need as people are rethinking their careers post-COVID. But I think we need to be thinking much broader about changing the tax, accounting, and reporting requirements around companies that invest in human beings. And the reason I say that is, if somebody was going to stay working for the same company for 35 years, it made total sense for a company to invest in that worker. When people are having 20 different jobs during their career, why would any rational company invest in a human being? And what we've got right now, and you see that play out where we've got a tax accounting and reporting system that says if a company invests in a robot for $5,000, the company gets an R&D tax credit. That robot is an asset. You can put it on your balance sheet and brag about it. If the same company spends $5,000 training 2 low-income workers to be more efficient than the robot, you don't get a tax credit. You get to deduct it, but it's not as valuable as a tax credit. It's viewed as an expense, and there's no way you can report it as a public company. So if I could wave my magic wand, I would create a new, and I'm trying to get this into reconciliation, a new tax credit for businesses that invest in workers, and I give them the bigger tax credit for low income and lower skilled workers. We've been trying to work with the accountants to create a new category in accounting of investment in human capital. And we are seeing the SEC start to move to have public companies at least report their investment in human capital. And I think we need to advance that even further.
Yeah, you just mentioned, however, that you'd want a magic wand to do that. Unfortunately, you don't have one. And you said that it might not make it into the reconciliation bill. Why do you think there's a lack of a political will or understanding for this? Are there enough folks on Capitol Hill who see this as a problem, or is this something that most people are still avoiding or looking away from as an issue?
Well, I think as the reconciliation package came together, during the campaign, obviously COVID was around, but I don't think we realized that post-COVID that everybody was going to kind of rethink what they want to do in their future. And I think that kind of re-examination of your life, which is happening across the country and frankly across the world, we couldn't necessarily foresee. And consequently, particularly on the Democratic side, other interests, whether it be healthcare or whether it be, lowering the price of prescription drugs, or obviously the existential crisis around climate change, investment in childcare, got well thought out proposals. And the workforce development piece, I think we assumed pre-COVID, we went in with a relatively low unemployment rate. That unemployment is still ticking down, but matching people's skills with what they want to do going forward, I don't think got enough attention. And as you look at just the plain practical applications and allotments of how the money was being spent, even in a $3.5 trillion package, the workforce component was actually relatively small. I think we will look back on that and say that was a mistake. I'm still trying to get these ideas like, this worker training tax credit modeled on the R&D tax credit into the package. But unfortunately, I think regardless of what we end up with on reconciliation, we're going to have to come back and revisit this workforce development issue in a much, much broader way. And I think it means more than just a single government program. It really does mean we got to change the tax accounting and reporting systems so that investment in human capital is treated at least as well, if not better, than investment in tangible goods.
Yeah. I understand. And a couple of minutes we have left, I want to turn to a question that came in from one of our audience members. You've talked a lot about how to incentivize companies and things the federal government can do. Is there a flip side of this equation, incentivizing workers to take these kinds of responsibility for this or to take action on this?
Well, I've got a series of legislative proposals that also create these worker training accounts where people can accrue on a tax-free basis up to $10,000 that could be then used as workers decide how they want to reinvest that into their own skill sets, particularly if you're thinking about a worker that was trying to change from one skill set or one career to another. And we've got to frankly learn from prior government efforts. I think about TAA, trade assistance grants that were made to workers when we don't really provide guidance or some direction. I think about workers, particularly the female workforce in a lot of the sweatshirt factories we had in Southern Virginia. Those jobs went away. Workers got TAA credits. Unfortunately, there was a disproportionate amount of those credits were used, for example, for training hairdressers, and we didn't have that much of need. And so how we think about giving workers more freedom to choose a future career. But I do think we need to match that with a little better assessment of what kind of careers are out there, recognizing that not all careers are going to require four-year college degrees, but they are going to require addition beyond high school, since we've seen post the 2008 recession, about 78% of the jobs that have been created have required higher skills. And frankly, over 2/3 of the jobs that have been lost have been those low-skill high school only jobs.
Senator, we're out of time. That was a lot. I appreciate you taking the time today to make time for Axios. And next, we'll go to my colleague, Aja Whitaker-Moore.
Nick, thanks for having me.
Thank you, Nick. I'm Aja Whitaker-Moore, and I'm the executive editor for Axios. Our next guest is president of Spelman College, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Hi, Dr. Campbell.
Hello, Aja. It's good to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. So let's just get right into it. The job market and employment dynamics in this country are in the middle of a pandemic-induced shift. So preparing and reskilling workers for the jobs that they want is viewed by many as a huge part of helping to kind of heal the labor market. So with that in mind, how is Spelman rethinking its approach to skills and work, particularly for adult learners?
there are some futurists who are predicting that in the next 10 to 20 years, more than 80 million jobs will just disappear. So it's really imperative for those of us who are in the field of education to think about how we educate for the future. Whatever job exists now could potentially disappear in the next 5 years. So the first and foremost, Spelman College thinks about a fundamental liberal arts education. What are the fundamental competencies in terms of critical thinking, in terms of evidence-based thinking, in terms of analysis, comparative analysis, presentation skills, writing skills, all of those fundamental skills we believe are going to be useful no matter what the job market looks like. But we are also inflecting that liberal arts education with some areas that we think do speak to the future. So for example, we have started a data science initiative throughout the Atlanta University Center. We also have opportunities for our students to study at the Army Research Lab for artificial intelligence and machine learning. We've started an entrepreneurship program. We have gaming that we have included. Cybersecurity is now a concentration in our computer science department. But in addition to that, we're also forging very strategic partnerships with industry and with research, not-for-profit research laboratories, as well, so that our students begin to get firsthand understanding of what a contemporary workforce requires of them. So we have partnerships with the Broad Institute on biomedical research. We have a partnership with IBM on quantum computing, which is expected to grow rapidly in the next few years. We are looking always for those opportunities that are going to enable our students to not only have their fundamental skills, but be on the cutting edge of those growth areas.
And how do you describe the creation of ESpelman as another kind of tool in your university's toolbox to address some of these issues?
So what's been kind of a revelation to us is that we've been very, very pleased to see the progress that we make with our degree-seeking students. That is, those students who are residential, who come to Spelman for a 4-year degree. But we also recognize that there's another population out there, and that's the population of adult learners. And so we have constructed something called ESpelman that is targeted specifically to those adult learners. It's our intent to bring the excellence and forward-looking pace of the Spelman College education to an entirely new audience, with the idea that those who are already in the workforce will be eager to upskill, to gain a certificate, a credential that will certify that they have some of the 21st century skills that are going to be so necessary to the future. And ESpelman is designed to provide those skills to our adult learners.
So right now, one of the things that we're hearing, a lot from companies anecdotally is that they're just having trouble finding workers, that they can't fill the positions that they need to fill. And how are you advising institutions on, what they need to focus on in terms of, matching workers with the right skills to the needs of their organizations?
So for those adult learners, one of the strategies that we've employed is to partner with an organization called Guild Education. And Guild Education works with companies, big multinational companies, and who are offering to their workforce the opportunity to upskill by taking online courses. So we partner with someone like Guild, and Guild in turn partners with a large company like Walmart's, for example. And we work closely with them to customize those courses and certificates and credentials that that particular company needs in order to upskill its workforce. For our 4-year students, our degree-seeking students, we also work very closely with companies and corporations. Many times corporations come to us for internships. They've been doing that for years. But what is different this time is that we're working very closely to understand what exactly are the positions that are going to be vacant and are in demand for our students. What are the skills and competencies that our students will need? So that as we're developing the internships, we understand also how we have to prepare our students to thrive once they get to those internships.
So one of the biggest, barriers that, we hear about people accessing, educational opportunities and being able to acquire, additional skills is the cost of programs, the cost of college. And there's been a lot of talk about, what role the federal government should play in that. What are your thoughts there on partnerships between universities and the federal government and making sure that people have access to these opportunities if they want to seek them?
Well, Aja, we know that from a great experiment that took place right after World War II, that the federal government can play a huge transformational role in terms of providing support for education. And that came right after World War II with the introduction of the GI Bill. And as you know, veterans who were returning from the war had access to having the federal government support their undergraduate education, and in some cases, their graduate education. And that support was responsible for moving huge numbers of people, Black, white, Asian, Latino, you name it, into the middle class. We need another type of effort like the GI Bill. Of course, we have now Pell Grants, but those Pell Grants have been almost the same for over a decade. We'd like to see the government at least double, maybe even triple Pell support so that we can enable students who are hardworking, determined to get a good education, to be supported in their efforts to do so. I think it should be a number one priority for our federal government.
Well, I think that we have time for one more question. We did have an audience question from one of our viewers in Washington, D.C., asking, how do we incentivize the workers of today to upskill, reskill for the jobs of tomorrow? So do you think that there's an incentive that should be provided in order to boost enthusiasm around this?
I think it is a powerful incentive when a company says to its employees, as a matter of your employee benefits, just as you're entitled to health care or dental care or vision care, we are also going to provide for you to be upskilled. That would be a potent incentive for companies throughout the country to adopt so that the existing workforce has an opportunity to be as competitive as it can possibly be.
I think that sounds like good advice. So I guess in our last couple of seconds, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your upcoming retirement and the future of Spelman as you're passing on the baton. So what would you say is their role in developing a stronger, more diverse workforce?
Spelman College has been around for 140 years. And in that time, it has been responsible, along with other HBCUs, for being one of the major driving forces in diversifying our workforce. It has been HBCUs that have provided most of our Black judges, lawyers, physicians, scientists in this country. And I see a very bright future for our HBCUs to continue being at the forefront of that effort.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, for joining Axios.
Thank you. It's great being here.
And next, we're going to have a view from the top segment with my colleague, SVP of Events and Creative Strategy at Axios, Kristen Burkhalter.
Thanks, Aja. I'm now looking forward to a conversation with Eleanor Cooper, who is the CEO at Pathstreams. Hi, Eleanor. Welcome to Axios.
Hi, Kristen. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course, let's dive straight in. According to Axios reporting, there are 6.7 million fewer Americans working now than there were before the pandemic. So there's a lot to talk about in relation to the current state of the job market and workforce development. I'd love to hear from you on your role at Pathstream. What is Pathstream and what are the problems you are solving for?
Absolutely. It's an exciting time to be working on the challenges of the labor market, the conversation about how everyone is looking for jobs and yet seemingly no one is getting hired. So the issues that we address at the highest level are that employers on one hand are seeking new talent, they're seeking individuals to grow their companies, and yet they oftentimes don't know exactly what they're hiring for. Often job descriptions are inaccurate, and often employers think, I might as well try to get the best talent I possibly can. And so they up-level the skills they need in the job descriptions. And then that trickles into, for job seekers often don't know what employers are really looking for. And finally, we have this layer of growing job technology that both has applicant tracking systems, which filter individuals out based on individual keywords, as well as one-click applications, making it easy for an individual to apply for hundreds or thousands of jobs at a time. And all of this brings together this where there actually could be a far more simple solutions, but we've overcomplicated the labor market. We find that even in a McKinsey study that was recently done, there are 30 million individuals who don't have a college degree, but have the skills to get jobs that pay 70% higher salaries. And that's the issue that we really focus on, is helping individuals transition from what might be a dead-end job, from feeling stuck, to getting into their first career that has upward economic mobility and upward economic potential.
There's a lot to discuss there. But before we do that, I know we have a quick video testimonial. Let's see that first.
Whenever I started doing research into digital marketing, I came across the Facebook digital marketing program with Pathstreams. I decided to go ahead, get into this program. And once I got inside of it, I realized that there was a lot about digital marketing that I really didn't know. Whenever I finished the Facebook digital marketing program, it was right in the middle of the 2020 COVID pandemic. I ended up getting laid off from my job as a multimedia designer. Of course, that put me into panic mode. So using the skills that I learned from the digital marketing program, that's what helped me getting my name out there, growing my TikTok page to like over 60,000. Being able to have that behind the scenes knowledge of how to connect with the people who are looking for a solution, that definitely helped me as a content creator, as a marketer, as an artist, to say, hey, look, I hear what you're calling out for. Let me connect with you to help you solve the problem that you need fixed. Taking all the stuff that they taught me within that certificate enabled me to be able to broadcast myself to the world and say, look, I'm here.
So Eleanor, how would you compare your programs to other easily accessible online courses like edX or Coursera, or even other colleges and universities?
Absolutely. So obviously there's been a large growth in online education since the COVID pandemic, and we see that different learners from different backgrounds with different jobs to be done need different solutions. And what we're talking about here is solving the problems for individuals who face more barriers and more hurdles in the labor market. And those individuals need more than online videos alone. And so Kendall, in this example, came to the table with a lot of skills, of passion, and we brought to her the opportunity to actively work in a learning environment where, in partnership with Facebook, our students are able to build and work and learn in the digital marketing tools that you use on the job. And then second, individuals also are in a cohort. They have an instructor and a peer group so they can build confidence and they can build context around the work that they're doing. And then finally, we help them with navigating that complicated labor market. And so these solutions that are packaged together are the product that we provide, which is different than what an online course alone is, or online videos alone, or what a 6-year college degree provides.
Makes sense. And what are the major hurdles that workers face without formal education in today's job market?
So they face all of these same challenges of you need to have a degree to get in the door. That's why it's important that all of these programs have been built so that they count towards a college degree. But they also face all the barriers of discrimination, as well as not knowing how to get through the applicant tracking systems and knowing which jobs to apply for and having the network to get that interview. Only 2% of individuals who apply for a job actually get an interview. And we've built a network of employer partners who are open to this type of talent, who are looking for more diverse talent to bring to their teams to help make that connection.
And one final question, how is Pathstreams' partnership with Facebook addressing these challenges with a focus on outcomes?
So by partnering with Facebook, we have designed the curriculum together such that we are ensuring we're teaching students the skills that they need to be successful in digital marketing careers. Facebook as an expert in the digital marketing space. And so we teach those digital tools throughout the programs. And Facebook brings that credibility to our students by transmission value of the program is branded by Facebook, and therefore so many more employers will talk to our students and take interviews with our students because the program has been endorsed by Facebook and they know that students have the current most cutting edge skills in the field. And importantly, this program is delivered through colleges and community colleges throughout the country, in rural areas and urban areas. It doesn't just reach the urban elite. And therefore, we were able to reach students that are mostly earn under $50,000 a year, mostly non-white, mostly parent learners, and help them achieve job placement rates over 80%. And those types of outcomes have come because of the partnership of the branding and the quality credentials and being able to really connect these students last mile to these jobs.
Eleanor, thank you so much for joining me today and for your smart insights and all of your hard work.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
And now over to my colleague, Sara Fischer.
Thank you, Kristen. And our final guest is representative from North Carolina's 12th Congressional District and the co-chair of the HBCU caucus, Representative Alma Adams, is joining us from Charlotte, North Carolina. Representative Adams, thank you so much for joining us and welcome.
Well, thank you so much, and it's great to be with you.
It's great to have you. So we wanted to talk today about HBCUs making huge strides, not just in workforce development, but also in developing a talent pipeline for the future. We know that you have been a large supporter of the HBCU Ignite Act. Tell me about how that act works, what it does, and how it helps to build workforce development for HBCUs.
Well, first of all, the Ignite HBCU Excellence Act represents a historic investment in both the physical and digital infrastructure of our historically Black colleges. Ignite stands for Institutional Grants for New Infrastructure, Technology, and Education for HBCU Excellence. So it does exactly what it says. It lights that spark that will help our HBCUs to flourish. Our schools are almost 2 centuries old. The bill provides for HBCUs to renovate, to repair, to modernize or construct new facilities, preserve buildings with historic significance, procure equipment and technology. It will also provide access to campus-wide reliable high-speed broadband and encourage additional public and private investments in these institutions and more. So it means then that we can build research and instructional labs that will train the next generation of Black and brown scientists. So it's a great bill. It's certainly something that's seriously needed on these campuses that go back to the early 1800s.
When you talk to some of your constituents or from folks around the HBCU community, do they cite infrastructure problems as inhibiting their growth? What are you hearing from them?
Well, I'm hearing that we need to upgrade our campuses. We need to make sure that we have the technology that's appropriate to train this workforce. We want to make sure that we can attract not only good students, but good faculty and staff, and have the kind of research that is commensurate with what we need to do to make sure that we have not only a good workforce, but one that is sustainable. So these schools, there are over 100 of them across the country. In our state of North Carolina, we have 11 HBCUs. 10 of them are active right now. And so we know that this is where the pipeline is. The caucus believes that in order to achieve this true diversity in our workforce, that we've got to focus on this kind of conversation. The impact that our schools have on the workforce is clear, because we're the ones in HBCUs that are producing 27% of all African-American STEM graduates, 40% of all African-American engineers, 50% of all African-American lawyers and public school teachers, and 80% of all African-American judges. So the statistics demonstrate to us that it is impossible to have a diverse workforce and inclusive workforce without engaging and involving HBCUs.
When we talk about some of that training that you provide, it's an amazing stat when you talk about STEM graduates from HBCUs going into the workforce. Do you feel like there's a gap between those that have access to vocational training, those that have access to education, and those that don't, versus those that get into the workforce? And how do HBCUs and funding them and giving them room to grow, how does it help to close that gap?
Well, first of all, we've got the pipeline there. We've got the students. We've got that diverse talent that's really needed in the workforce. We created the Partnership Challenge in 2017 to really connect stakeholders, to connect our industries with our schools, and to make sure that our graduates have an equal part of their business strategic development, to help give our first generation college students, because many of them who attend HBCUs, just as myself, are first generation students. So HBCUs, students, industries, and Congress can work together, and that's what we're trying to do to create these opportunities for these students and to advance the diversity in their workforce. Everybody's talking about D&I now, and we have the pipeline that will help fulfill those requirements that they're looking for their various companies. And so we believe that we have the talent on the campuses in terms of the students, but also the faculty, to make sure that we are inclusive and make sure that our young people are inclusive in this workforce. We've had, by the way, over 70 plus companies that have pledged to increase their investment and engagement with this diverse talent in these schools. So we're excited about that. We started this a couple of years ago, and now the Partnership Challenge has increased and it's grown tremendously.
Wow. But 70 companies, that's a huge feat. But we have, 1,000 companies, right, on the Fortune 1000 list. We have so many major corporations. What are you thinking about doing to close that gap, to get even more companies on board to that commitment?
Well, we just believe that, first of all, word of mouth has been a good thing. And many of the times when companies join the partnership, we send out a big press release. We give them an opportunity to talk about. A lot of these companies are already doing things. It's just that they are not fully engaged, and we're able to mesh that partnership just a little bit better for them. We are engaged every day with these schools, and so but that word of mouth, getting that press release out, giving these companies an opportunity to not only introduce themselves through it, but also to talk about the kinds of things that they are already engaged in. We give them an opportunity to connect with the campuses, to get on the campuses. We have several programs that we do, the Diversity in Tech Summit that we do, STEAM Day on the Hill. And of course, we've tried to advertise that widely, and we have hundreds of companies and corporations coming on and participating. And then, of course, like I said, word of mouth, the word gets out, and you're right. There are many more opportunities that will be available for the hundreds and thousands of companies that are out there now. But the word is getting out, and we are seeing a tremendous amount of success with these companies and with our schools.
Congresswoman, a four-year education sometimes is not for everybody. Sometimes people want to just get a vocational education so that they can go into their field of choice without having to make the investment for 4 years or the financial investment. What are you doing to modernize vocational training to ensure that credentialed workers can still be in the pipeline for the future workforce, but they're not necessarily the same people who would be going to that four-year anniversary program or university program?
Well, you're absolutely right. I think what we look for, I'm a former educator, 40 years I spent on the campus of Bennett College in Greensboro. And I believe that while it was, for me, my route was to get a 4-year degree, but we want students to be prepared to have a good life, a good living, to make a good living. And so that may mean for some young people and some people that are a little bit older, we don't have everybody that does not come to school right out of high school, but technical programs at community colleges. I mean, many of and so what we're doing, for example, the president has looked at community college as a way, and I think that's a good way to promote workforce development as well. And many of our 4-year institutions are engaging students in this way, but I do think that we have to consider that there are many ways for young people to get the skill set that they need to have a good quality of life. And so everybody, you're right, will not go to a 4-year school, but we certainly want them to get the skills that they need. And if that means at a 2-year institution, then certainly we are very supportive of doing that. And the Congress is as well, because you've heard about the initiatives to do a free community college and so forth. But workforce development is going to be really a real key. We've got a lot of jobs out here. We don't have people who are prepared and trained to do them. And so we've got to marry those two so that, it's going to help the economy and it's going to help us do what we need to do to keep our country going.
So at Axios, we like to do one fun thing, and we have just about a minute left. So I have a one fun thing question for you, if you're open to it. You clearly love hats. Talk us through how many hats do you own and what's the story behind that?
Well, right now it's over 1,400. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 because I've recently made a purchase of, I think, about 15. So I'm probably at 1,415 hats. I started wearing hats when I was a young girl. Of course, that's something that's really big in the African American community anyway. And I remember my grandmother telling me to cover your noggin, because I kept a cold a lot. I had allergies and those kinds of things. So since I've been keeping my noggin covered, as my grandmother used to say, I haven't had many colds and that kind of thing. But yes, I love them. And I started because I had these health issues pretty much. But even as a young girl, I wore hats. We wore them primarily to church. I only had 3 or 4. Now I have a room that's dedicated to my hats at home. And every year I have an annual Adams Mad Hatters event. And so we look forward to that. It's a lot of fun. But I use it. And now, of course, because I do have so many, I coordinate those hats with my attire. So it's good. I'm known for my hats. We've done probably 3 or 4 different stories. I'm in about 4 books about hats. But there's a hat for every head.
Life goals is to have a room full of hats. Congresswoman Adams, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much, and you have a great day. Stay safe.
Thank you so much for joining this afternoon for another virtual conversation that has made us all smarter, faster. And thank you to our sponsor, Facebook, for making this event possible. For more information, you can sign up for my newsletter, Axios Media Trends, or any of our newsletters at axios.com/newsletters or on the Axios app. Thank you all for joining, and we'll see you on axios.com.